They got me feeling like I'm Akademiks.
And we have, our, one of our favorite journalists who's on the job, Lauren Conlin. She's doing daily updates, but also we got Traplo Ross. So we got two perspectives. And I'm going to let you know, as this hearing, it was in preliminary hearing, it's going to get to trial shortly after. Once we get into this, I do want to tell y'all that we're going to get more, like really covering this, because it's David stuff. Like it's one of the hidden mysteries, if you ask me. So let's get to the updates of what was said. So here's Lauren Conlin. Also, we have Traplo Ross video to play as well. So just check this out. So remember, this is a David trial. He's accused of killing this underage girl that he was dating. Her name is Celeste Rivas. He supposedly dismembered her body. Her body was found in a frunk. And I'll give you a little bit of spoiler before we even get to it, because I saw it in Traplo Ross video. Supposedly, they're saying that the dude cut up her body, put it in a bag, put it in the front trunk of his Tesla, and then put a bunch of when you go through a car wash and you get that little tree, air freshener. He put like 10 of them in the bag with a rotten corpse, thinking it was going to hide the scent. Now, granted, let me say someone did that. They're saying he did that, but someone did that. And if he did that, that's crazy. But listen to the update. Here we go.
All right, it's day 2 of David's preliminary hearings. Very dark, not quite as dark as yesterday, but when David entered the courtroom, again, shackled and cuffed, he was uncuffed, and he was shackled at the waist still. His lawyer, Blair Burke, she did the thing where she kind of rubs his back and whispered to him, and it really does give me vibes of like Leslie Abramson with the Menendez brothers. Brian Ented pointed out that Ann Taylor also did this with Brian Kohberger. I think that some of these female defense attorneys, they think that it makes their male client maybe seem like less of an alleged monster. So I did notice that. And David, once again, very casual, very unfazed, sitting back in his chair, watching the screen, watching the witnesses, no type of emotion whatsoever. So Marilyn Bernardsky, one of his defense attorneys, continued her cross-examination of former Mogul Vision finance director Benjamin Gregor, who again was testifying that nearly all of David's finances were handled by his mother. I think the defense was really trying to hone in here that although the people is claiming that.
Okay, let me also pause to remind you guys yet again. So where we are in this criminal proceeding is that he was indicted. Actually, no, let me stop it. He wasn't indicted. There was criminal charges filed. Now it was filed by the DA. Now, this was after supposedly the police kind of like made it a thing where they're like, we're arresting him. They arrested him without charges. Then the charges came after, but from the DA. But here's the thing. The DA didn't secure an indictment. Now, this is how it works in every pretty much county, every local municipality, and also even federally. You could have a cop. So if a cop sees you do something, he could write a complaint, get you locked up. But if it's of a felonious level where you could spend at least over a year and a day in jail, most places usually require it to be grand juried, right? So if it's definitely murder, they want a grand jury, which means the majority of it's usually a large panel, so it could be like 23. Some places it could be 15, but let's say 23, at least 12 people, which is it's like 55%, saying that these charges should go to trial. So you just need majority to indict. So of 23 jurors, you need majority to indict. Now you need unanimous to convict. So 12 or 12. You need 12, all 12, because it's going to be 12 jurors. Now, if you don't have a grand jury indictment, but charges are brought, the other way to continue to a trial is what's called a preliminary hearing. And in those preliminary proceedings, the evidence is presented in front of a judge, and the judge begins to say, do you have enough for trial? Remember this. The difference is in a grand jury indictment, and they always say there's a saying that you can indict a ham sandwich. If you get an indictment via a grand jury, usually it's a secret proceeding and the defense doesn't know about it. They don't have a chance to testify. Their defense lawyer doesn't have a chance to like cross-examine witnesses. It's all what the prosecutor says. That's why it's heavily favored for the prosecutor. Diddy got indicted. In LA a lot, they do these preliminary hearings. For example, A$AP Rocky, there was a preliminary hearing, which by the way was public, like it was actually filmed. In this case, they're doing a preliminary hearing, which means that David's defense team gets to kind of play defense against what they're alleging. Remember, they're not proving he's guilty yet. They're just proving they have probable cause for him to stand accountable for the charges they brought, which is murder. Okay? Now, let me play this now that you understand where we are. So we're not even at the trial yet. We're not at the trial, but we're at the stage where prosecutors have to publicly. That's the difference between preliminary hearing and a grand jury indictment. Grand jury indictment, secret, and defense not there. Preliminary hearing, defense is there, and it's public. Okay, so now we're finding out what they really do have against them. Sorry. No, it's not trial. It's not trial yet.
Crimes, or these alleged crimes, were financially motivated. Truthfully, he didn't know how much money he had. Gregor said that, sorry if you can hear me. Gregor said again, David didn't really have much involvement. He never asked him how much money he was making or what was coming in. And Marilyn Bednarski tried to ask him about a charity or a trust that was used for giving to charity. She kept bringing this up. There were objections to this, just to, why are we even talking about this? What's the relevance here? And the judge sustained the objections because she's like, yeah, this is a probable cause hearing. And I was like, I see what they're doing, but, there's no jury here. So stop trying to say he gives to charity. This was interesting. There is a new name to watch for, a bodyguard named Sheldon. Sheldon Jaculus, I think I heard, but it was tough. Even Gregor, the witness, couldn't quite tell us his last name. So he was identified, Sheldon, as Burke's live-in security guard. And Gregor testified that he lived at David's home for about 6 months, but Gregor said that he never discussed what happened inside the home with David ever. And also this was during the redirect examination with Beth Silverman. So she also pointed out during this redirect that, you say David didn't have any say in his finances, but, he signed this contract himself, or he signed the contract for this home that he bought. So he kind of knew something about how much money he had. And Gregor said, yeah, okay, I got it. He also Gregor acknowledged that David did have an account or a credit card or two, or both, outside of what he managed for Mogul Vision.
And by the way, she's being thorough here, so I know some of the, I think when we hear Trap Lore, he gives a lot more salacious details. She's just being thorough. We're going to find out that David had a contract with his record label that was for $6 million per album. Every time he dropped an album, I know you guys never heard of his music, but his music was pretty popular. He was going to get $6 million per album. Just to put it in perspective, that's fucking huge. That would be probably more than 95 to 96% of all musicians currently that's on a major. I say that to say his music clearly was either highly profitable or definitely his label, which was Interscope Records. They were definitely exploiting his likeness and his music to a very high level. By the way, his monthly listeners was out the roof.
So let's see. Gregor did point out that at one point he was asked about the trips, the trip to London, the trip to Texas. Did David purchase this through anything you saw under the Mogul Vision accounts? And he said no. And Beth Silverman kind of insinuated, okay, right, so he purchased this through his own account, which he managed. And Gregor was like, yeah, probably. Then it came up. Silverman asked if Gregor ever discussed Celeste going to London with Colleen Burke or Josh Marshall, and he said no. But then he did end up admitting that he discussed Celeste traveling to London with Robert Morgenroth, in which he said he just kind of asked him if it was true. Is it true she traveled to London with David? And I'm paraphrasing here. And again, yes, Gregor said he later learned the airline tickets were bought through one of Burke's personal accounts, nothing that he manages. So then Silverman goes back to this bodyguard, Sheldon, towards the end of her redirect, and she's like, so, and it was very forceful. She was like, did you ever discuss David and Celeste having fake IDs or drugs and alcohol or partying or Sheldon driving them to parties? And it was like, whoa. There were some objections, and Gregor was like, nope, no. So I'm thinking that the line of questioning around this Sheldon character was very significant. So we should probably remember this name.
Okay. Again, I know you guys do care about the salacious shit, right? I'll play a little bit of trap lore as well. Listen to this shit. This is crazy. Now, and by the way, Trap, I'm proud of you, my boy. This is part of the lane that I think you're gonna do so amazing in, and I think this is great for you. Listen.
Okay, so we just got some crazy information about David's financials from inside the courtroom, and this is probably one of the craziest things I've heard. We heard the total potential value of his recording contract. So apparently, David lost out on between $6 to $12 million because of the murder of Celeste. He had an insane recording contract with Interscope. We've just heard from somebody that was from Interscope that was talking on the situation and his contract.
So someone from Interscope is testifying basically towards his financial ability and how much, financially he was well off. And they're testifying that, hey, per his contract, he's getting $6 million per album.
Pulled up all of his numbers, all of his earnings for every single year. It was absolutely crazy. But basically, best case scenario, he was looking at like $3 million per album. He was basically...
Oh, never mind. $3 million per album. Sorry.
In line to get $13 million minimum if he'd gone through with his third and fourth album. Best case scenario, he was going to get $6 million per album, and he...
Wait, I thought it was 3. Never mind. Okay, 6.
Might have got $17 million completely out of the deal. But what it turns out is that Interscope, they terminated his contract at the end of December 2025. He's had no money in 2026, and he's missed out on those millions. That's going to be a bad look for him.
Okay, so that's one thing. I think what Lauren was talking about was the fake ID, but I gotta play this real quick. Check this out.
Okay, so I think I might have just seen one of the dumbest things that David has done in this whole debacle. We just saw testimony from one of the criminalists who was actually there at the yard, who was going through the car when it was found with the remains of Celeste in it. And what we found out was that apparently the car, not just the car, but the front, the body bags, all the way through the car, in the center console, the front cabin, the back cabin, and the back seats, inside the front, inside the bag, it was littered with air fresheners. The guy had put air fresheners everywhere. That's got to be one of the dumbest things I've heard in this whole case. He really thought that just chucking air fresheners at the problem was actually going to fix it. And it wasn't. It was like a whole combination. I think they said that there was around 11 plus air fresheners. We did actually see a picture of them. And it was a combination of about 4 or 5 of those, kind of Christmas tree shaped air fresheners. And then those ones that you plug into the air vents of your car. This guy really is that dumb that he thought chucking a bunch of air fresheners in the front trunk would solve this problem. It is insane. But I'll keep you posted on any more updates as they come out.
Okay. And another update. Listen to this.
Okay, so I just saw some of the worst stuff from this trial. There was blood absolutely everywhere in David's garage, on the floor, on...
Oh, wow. See, we've never heard this before. So they found blood. We didn't know that they found blood in his house and whatever. We thought they did a bang-up job cleaning the shit. So they're saying they did find blood there.
The black gym mats that were on the ground in his Tesla, not just the front trunk, but also the back trunk. When they lifted up the kind of trunk liner in the back trunk, that was covered in blood too. The very furthest back rear seats in the car appeared to have they call it luminol in the films, but I think it's got a different name when it actually is used in real trials and real forensic work. But basically it glowed up when they sprayed it with this substance on the back 3 rows of the seats. Everywhere was just covered in blood. We saw the blue kiddie pool in his garage, covered in blood. They said it smelt fresh like laundry. Everything had been scrubbed down. They even found a black trash bag filled with wet wipes that were covered in brown substances that basically was likely blood. So that's what we've seen so far. It's very messed up. I'll keep you guys posted what else I hear. Okay, so I just saw some of the work.
Wow. Not gonna lie. That sounds wild. Anyway, I do want to play or keep playing with Lauren. let me find her thing on Twitter that we could just kind of skip through. We don't care about the bodyguard. Clearly, like, the bodyguard was trying to get, like, fake IDs and stuff. Was trying to get fake IDs for, you know, remember the girl was underage, right? So let's see. Give me a second. Could we? Okay, here we go.
So yeah, it got a little hostile for a minute. And then the next witness, this was kind of long. Those numbers are subject to change. I forgot my glasses. I could not see the screen very well, but I do think they are largely accurate. But again, I will be making changes once I get those exhibits if necessary. So yeah, let me see what else. I mean, during the cross-examination by Marilyn Bednarski, which was pretty tough, he wasn't really understanding some of her questions about the contracts and this and that, the contracts that were broken with David.
That's the person from Interscope. Okay. Patrick Steinfeld, attorney for Celeste Rivas Hernandez family, they spoke. Let's see what the family attorney's saying. Remember, this is the person who died, Celeste Rivas, the young girl. Her family obviously going to show up because they want to see justice be served, and they're not going to be talking to the media, but they have an attorney that will talk to media for them.
Rick, how are you? How are you doing? It was a rough day.
Is there a place to make a statement around here?
We would love for you to make a statement somewhere. I don't know if there's a podium. Yeah, can you give it to us first?
Sure. Well, today was an absolutely crushing day in the preliminary hearing. The evidence that was put on by the prosecutor was absolutely damning, showing the images of Celeste's decomposed body.
And that's also the thing that's happening, Chad. So apparently if you're in court, they're not doing too much censoring. They're not like, okay, this is too gruesome. Maybe we just hand out pamphlets. Well, there's no jury at this point. They're actually showing it on the screen, the body that's rotten with maggots and flies and it's like whatever it looks like, that's what you're seeing. So you could imagine, you know, obviously a judge should be unfazed by that, but people in the gallery are going to be like, whoa, what the fuck?
In the trunk of a Tesla, and the parents were sitting there, and it was just absolutely horrible. But they wanted to show strength, and they're here for Celeste, but it was extremely bad. And
Hi, Patrick. How are you? How are you doing?
Okay. Alrighty then. Cool. All right. It's crazy that homeboys just like threw in a bunch of this was this is the DA spoke after the first day. Let's see what the DA says.
Of David Anthony Burke, the singer David, spelled D4VD. This preliminary hearing will last approximately 3 to 5 days, at which point we will be seeking to hold David to answer for 3 felony counts of which he has been charged. First-degree murder with special circumstances, the count of lewd and lascivious acts with a 13-year-old, and the count of mutilation of human remains. David will be facing a maximum punishment of life without the possibility of parole, or he is also death penalty eligible. The decision on whether or not to seek the death penalty has not been made at this point. Now, the point of a preliminary hearing.
I'm going to be honest with you. With all due respect, if he's found guilty, I think it's appropriate to seek the death penalty. This guy, you know, whatever the story could be of how she died, let's say even if it was, okay, maybe I'm tripping, but I was saying like if she died, like say they were taking drugs and she actually died, right? The dismemberment of the body, the concealment of the body, all of the stuff that he did really even in post, and even the depravement of you're dealing with a minor, I think really boils to a level where you're like, yes, life in prison is the bare minimum, but at certain point, when you get to certain type of disgusting behavior, you got to say, just throw the baby out with the bathwater, okay? Murk this nigga. Like, just give him the needle. You get what I'm saying? So for me, if these allegations are true, I wouldn't be opposed to the death penalty. Now, if they're not true, clearly, you don't send the innocent guy to death, but.
is somewhat different than you actually perceive in the media, whether it's TV or the movies. Because what often happens in TV or the movies is you go from an immediate arrest into a trial. But in our system and in California in particular, you have an intermediate step. That intermediate step is a preliminary hearing where effectively the prosecution's evidence is going to be tested before a judge, not a jury. The standard that we have to meet is not beyond a reasonable doubt at the preliminary hearing stage. It is probable cause. We are not obligated, nor will we be presenting all the evidence at a preliminary hearing that we will be presenting at a trial to prove David beyond a reasonable doubt guilty of the 3 felony charges of which he has been charged. So at the preliminary hearing, we will call a number of officers. We estimate there will be over 10 different witnesses, both officer testimony, coroner testimony, and there will be individual witnesses as well. And again, we can rely on hearsay and other things that won't be allowed to be relied on in an actual trial. The judge at the end of the presentation of the evidence, and again, this is evidence that can be cross-examined by a defense attorney, and that process has already been done. At the end of the presentation of all this evidence, the question will be, will David be held to answer?
Okay, so he's explaining the preliminary process, which is then the judge makes the determination, right? Just not a grand jury.
On the 3 felony charges. We believe we will more than accomplish the evidentiary burden of probable cause at this point to hold David to answer on these 3 felony charges. At that point, if the judge does hold him to answer, we will file an information that will detail the actual 3 criminal charges. Thereafter, there will be a trial date that will be set, and David, if he so chooses, will proceed to trial. And we will prove at that point, beyond a reasonable doubt, that David committed these 3 crimes. And when, we do not predict if, when he is convicted, we will then be seeking the sentence that we are allowed to seek by order of law, and we will let you know.
Okay, he's just talking about formalities. So we'll see what's up with that, chat. But right now, it's not looking good for David. There's nothing, but of course, remember, in a probable cause hearing, they don't have to put up a defense. However, it is a preview of what their defense will be, but also because it's a statement of what is in this probable cause affidavit, it's all going to look bad. Now, there's going to be, so we go through preliminary hearing, then we're going to go to a pretrial stage. In pretrial, I'm pretty sure he's going to go to throw out a bunch of stuff. Yo, you can't use that picture of the plastic bag. You can't use this. You can't use that, to make his case a little bit better. But I'm not going to lie. Right now, we're just hearing shocking shit. Your car is full of blood. Your car got the body. Your garage got a plastic or some type of like construction bag with a bunch of wet wipes looking like it was wiping up blood. It looks kind of crazy. And now we got to think about them. This is going to matter if it gets to a point where he's convicted, and in terms of sentencing. And this is why I said death. If what they're saying in preliminary hearing that the entire garage was filled with blood, and we're thinking about a bloody, gruesome scene, what would you have done to a 14 or 15-year-old girl in trying to kill her? Or actually not trying, but you did kill her. That would result in that. Did you cut her up? Did you torture her? Did she just bleed out? Right? This is not like the thought of like, maybe you're like, oh, she overdosed. And he's like, oh shit, she died. I gotta like cover up this death. No, it doesn't look like that. It looked like he might have, and according to the autopsy report, may have did some blunt trauma shit. It looked like there's stab wounds. There's cutting. Like someone, it was pretty, not only gruesome, but it's pretty bloody. When you think about those type of things in totality, how gruesome it is, how young the girl is, how wrong all the situation was, it's one of those things, the prosecutor is saying they'll address it at a different time, but it sounds like a death penalty. I ain't gonna lie. All right, let's move on for a second. Have you seen the boy? The boy has been back outside. Boy, Indeed, he is. If you don't know, Drake has been outside recently. He had a Nocta retreat that was in the New York, New Jersey area. And if you don't know what that is, basically Nike, who supposedly had paid for the suite at the Super Bowl, not Super Bowl, I mean the World Cup that he went to, a part of all that dealings was that there was a bunch of subsequent parties and a weekend or a couple of days, a retreat, so to speak, that Drake was to host.